Okay, boys and girls, here we go. Happy dialysis. This is our ongoing family storytelling session, and we have Paula, who is a dialysis patient, and she's got a favorite family story to tell us. Come on, Paula.
All right, my favorite family story. Well, I used to live with my grandmother in her home, and she had a blind son.
Wow.
And her blind son, it was kind of laughable being blind. I'm going to tell you the story about how he really could do things that an unsighted person could not do, not being able to see. But anyway, my blind uncle, who was really a famous gospel singer, as he grew up, we used to watch him in the house and how he would get around and what he would do. One thing that he would do, he knew how to wash the dishes perfectly, spotlessly, without looking at them.
Uh-huh.
The next thing he knew how to do was type.
Type.
To type on a typewriter.
Wow.
Perfectly.
Wow.
And he, as a singer, he had to, he was invited to places to sing, so he had to send them letters back. And he would answer them on the typewriter. And after he was a good typist. And after he got through typing each one, he'd have somebody look at it, and he'd say, look at it, make sure you don't see no misspelled words, make sure you see that I said everything right. And we looked at his letters, and everything was typed perfectly right for an unsighted person.
Wow,
and we
okay.
would laugh and say, how did he do this? How can he do this?
Wow, okay, so we've got a relative, an uncle, who's a famous gospel singer, and he can wash dishes really great, and he can type really great. Now, what is his name?
Harold Boggs. And in fact, they called him, his professional name was Professor Harold Boggs.
Harold, Harold?
Yes.
Boggs, B-O...
Yes. G-G-S.
B-O-G-G-S. Professor Harold Boggs.
Yes.
Wow, okay, well, so we can look him up, right?
Yes, he's on YouTube.
Okay, all right, so tell us more about the blind man.
Okay. All right, so then after he became famous, he would go around, and it was back in the older days, so they had to travel by car. And when he'd sing at all the churches and auditoriums, he'd get on TV. When they gave him money, he would have to come home and count his money. And he could count his money. And we wondered how he could count his money. Well, he learned to feel on the money, and he could feel the character of the number.
Wow.
If it was a 2, if it was a 0, if it was a 5, if it was a 10. And we would laugh and try to confuse him because he wanted us in the room with him to make sure he's counting right. And we'd try to trick him. We said, well, this is a 20. He said, no, it's a 10. And he was right. Then the next thing he would do, he would always have us, when we took him outside for a walk, he wanted to hold our arm so we could lead him where he wanted to go. Well, one day, nobody was around except me, because I was little. I was a small girl. And he came outside, and he said, and he wanted to go to my uncle's house. And so I said, okay, I'll take you. But one day, said, I'm going to try to go over there myself. And it was a street over. And so I said, scared. I said, because my grandmother would get me if, I'd let him do that. But he said, no, Paula, he said, you just stand here in the yard and you watch me. He crossed the street. He went down an alley, which connected the other street. And my uncle's house was straight across the street from there. And he went by himself.
And
How can a blind...
And you stood there in the yard and watched him go, even though he couldn't see, he could get there.
Yes.
Wow.
And he was in his 20s then, so I think he thought he was strong. He thought, he was macho, he could do it, and he did it. Because, even as he went, I went over, to the alley to see how he was going, and he did perfectly fine.
Wow.
Okay, the next thing this man did, he could tell when a certain person was in the room, but we didn't know how he knew. Like if he came in from outside and he would go through the living room, he could tell who was in the living room. Now, I wanted to see one day, so I went in the living room and sit down, but I was very quiet. And I said, no, I didn't say anything. I saw him coming in. My uncle was leading him in the house, and he came in the door, and there was 2 or 3 other people in the room, and he could hear them talking. And a lot of times he picked up voices, so he knew people's voices when he heard them. But that day I didn't say anything, period, because I wanted to see what he would do. So when he came in, he said, oh, hi, Michael. Hi, Alicia, and whoever was in the room. And then he said, hi, Paula, and I didn't say a word. And he said, Paula, I know you're in the room. I know because you're sitting in that chair. And he pointed to the chair, and I was in it.
Huh.
So those are stories that I remember as a kid that just blew my mind. But he was a man of God now. Now, we say we're spiritual, a lot of times. And, I wonder, was it the Spirit of God directing him at these certain things? Because he was blind.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that so much. I believe that so much that, God can, like they said, teach us, lead us, guide us into, whatever it is that we need to know. And he watches over us, especially if we have impairment. So, a lot of times, it's a mystery, and it's something to laugh about, but it's really kind of serious, how God watches over us. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay, well, that's a wonderful story. That's an amazing family story. And we'll just remember that story of, what'd you call him, Professor?
Yes.
Yeah, Professor Harold Boggs, the blind gospel singer. And so our motivation here is just to grab these family stories and make sure to keep them alive, and that is part of how we're keeping the dialysis patients strong, because as we interact with our family, as we tell our stories, we are getting more power because we're just empowering the whole family. So thanks for that story, and I can't wait for hear the next one.